Hey guys, Coach Keith Keppner here. Let's talk about the multi-jab strategy. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of this strategy. Now, again, to be clear, I'm not saying like this is the only history of people talking about multi-jabs and everything else I'm going to talk about, but just the formulation of this, how I was taught it, and the genesis, all right? So my father was a professional boxing coach for decades, and he worked with a lot of different guys. And he worked in a medium to smaller town. So he wasn't he was from Chicago, but then he moved down to Georgia, and there just isn't a lot of just people in general in towns like Athens, Georgia, right? Which is the town that he moved to. So you're limited on your talent pool, all right? Now, sometimes limitations help create great things and help you synthesize things and formulate things to make them optimal or an attempt at optimizing. So he had different guys, and some guys, went really well and pretty far and everything else and had some professional careers and things of that nature, and some didn't. And so it was something that he ran into, that he expressed, was that he would have someone who was maybe very, very, very physically talented, right? They have all the physical tools to be a great fighter, a great boxer, but they maybe are overanalyzing things. They're maybe creating correlations or causal links between things that are actually just correlations, right? They're not really being that sharp tactician as a boxer. So he's like, man, how can I honestly just simplify it? Another way to say it is just dumb it down. Make it so somebody who is not the sharpest person can be successful, right? They don't have to, because he would tell me all these stories about fighters he worked with and produced that they would almost become neurotic with techniques and strategies and things like that. They'll be like, oh man, well, if I do this, he's going to do this. And then if he does that, then I got to do this. And then that happens, and then this happens, and this and that and this. And as he would just be like, dude, shut up. Focus. Do this basic thing, this and this and this. And until that stops working, don't stop doing it. So that's where the genesis of what I call multi-jab strategy, which is really a foundational concept of stripping away all of the awesome nuances, details, specific scenarios, and everything else that there are in boxing and in combat sports in general, and just distilling it to its essence, all right? Because anybody can make anything complicated, right? It's up to us as coaches and up to you as a coach or a fighter to break it down to its most essential components, all right? So let's jump into it. Start off first, talk about as I describe what this is, let's talk about every piece of this, all right? Because there aren't that many pieces, but I want to give you all the context of every piece so you understand each mechanism and how it works, all right? So first, let's talk about jab benefits, right? We all know the jab's the most important punch of boxing. Just a little refresher for you guys that maybe don't know, or maybe you forgot some of the reasons why. It's the punch that's closest to your opponent's face, right? So when you're in your stance, it's there, the fastest one to get there. It costs the least energy, because you're not rotating the body. You're just snapping it out there and you're stepping with it, little shoulder snap, things of that nature, and that's about it, all right? So it costs the least energy. If you're tired, a good adage is jab. Now, I know what you might be saying, because if you're like me, man, your shoulder would get worn out so much and everything else. Don't always try to throw power jabs. Learn how to throw jabs that are, medium, sub-powerful, and also, as well, you got to take care of the shoulder and everything else, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, all right? Also, the jab is, since it's super fast, it can be hard to counter, all right? Particularly against a mid-level guy, but if you even just get really good at not telegraphing your jab, having a fast jab, it can be a hard punch to counter because it's so dang close, and it doesn't cost much energy, and it doesn't open you up very much either. So it's theoretically just about the safest punch you can throw. Not that you can't get hit when you throw a jab. Anyone that's boxed for any period of time can tell you that you can and will get hit while throwing a jab. But it minimizes the openings, right? Because you're not rotating the body, opening up your torso. You're staying sided up the whole time like that, versus like with a right hand, you're going to open yourself up a little bit. With a hook, there's a rotation commitment that happens. Uppercut, the hand drops a little bit to come up under for the uppercut, there's openings that get created. You go down for the body, you open up the head. All right, so again, the jab is about the safest punch you can throw, bar none. It's going to be the most effective punch you can throw in the way of controlling the pacing of a fight. It's going to cost the least amount of energy. It's not going to be the most effective in power, typically, unless you really learn how to snap it and aim it correctly, like I've talked about in some of my short videos and some other videos as well. But that is the benefits of the jab. Now, let's talk about some things that is the problem if we just approach a jab with just single jabs, just a jab instead of the jabs, right? So a single jab, and again, don't get me wrong, a single jab is great. Like it's not, oh man, and again, to be clear, all these things are not all or nothing, all right? Because the world is not all or nothing. It's shades of gray. And when you're dealing with what is a very complex environment in sport with just a almost infinite amount of variables, you're always going to be wrong if you say always or never, all right, typically. So with the single jab, though, typically what that can be is, again, it's effective. It can control people. It does all the things that we just talked about as the benefit of the jab. The downside of it, though, is if I'm shooting single jabs, and you'll see high-level guys do this, they shoot single jabs for a reason. Why? It's bait, right? They're shooting a single jab, single. They're not doing it because that's just all they can do and know how to do. They're doing that because they're shooting that single jab with anticipation of the counter coming, and they're looking to counter the counter, all right? I see a lot of our guys, when they're starting off, they'll be single jabbing, and everybody, we all do it from time to time, and it's not going to get you killed all the time. But if you just do this all the time, it can get you killed, particularly as you go up levels, if that's all you can do, all right? And if you're not thinking of these things, all right? So shoot that single jab with the anticipation of you're drawing out that's bait. You're baiting a counter that you're looking to counter that counter. But so often I'll see guys in the beginning of their boxing career or their journey in boxing, and they'll single jab, and they're surprised that someone counters the single jab, right? Don't be surprised, all right? Now, how can you shut down the counter of the single jab? You probably guessed it by the whole name of this video, multi-jabs, right? So double, triple jabs, quadruple jabs, quintuple, multi-jabs, all right? So that's something that's just so basic, like so basic. It reminds me actually of a strategy that someone was telling me that their high school tennis coach taught them or had their whole team do, and their team did very well and won like a bunch of, I can't remember what level, maybe regional, high school titles, something like that. But it basically was playing tennis in a fashion that was not looking to like overreach and try to really grab something. It was just playing to the point, basically counting on the other person to make a mistake. So you just stay solid, and then inevitably they overreach or whatever it is. I'm not an expert on tennis. And then bam, they miss something, hit something out or whatever, and you've just stayed locked and solid the whole time. Same thing can be applied with boxing. Instead of doing all this like crazy nonsense stuff, just doing some of these basics things like double and tripling jabs can make a world of difference. And you can see it at every single level of boxing, all right? From the beginner novice type division to the more advanced international level in amateurs to professionals all the way up to the greatest of all time. Is using multi-jabs and how it can fluster and mess up so many guys on so many levels, all right? So I just don't want to talk about that, repeat that point too much, but it is such an important point. Basic, simple things that if you do it, you'll see the reward for it. Let's talk about the benefits of multi-jabs, all right? So the first benefit, it's like I'm talking about from previously, is it's going to shut down the counter, right? If you know I'm shooting one shot, it's easy for you to be like, okay, let me defend the one shot, and let me counter right after the shot. Or you can counter right as the shot comes as well. And if you know there's no follow-up, you know there's no danger, right? So think about that. He's shooting one jab. You know you can shoot a shot over the jab, under the jab, with the jab. And if there's nothing typically coming after it, you got nothing to worry about, right? Or he shoots that jab, and you know there's nothing coming after that jab. So therefore, you just have to deal with that one punch, and then right afterwards, give your response, right? And maybe a few responses, right? Counter with combinations. Whole nother concept or whole nother video, but very important concept. All right, it keeps them busy. The jab, the single jab itself keeps them busy, but the multi-jabs, double, triples, etc., keep them really busy. All right, you're keeping pop, 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 something in their face, pop, 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 pop. And they don't know when is the last of the jabs, right? So it keeps them extra occupied. Versus a single jab, it will keep you occupied because you don't know when it's going to start. But if you don't know when it's going to end, right? If you don't know if it's 1, 2, 3, you don't know when that string of punches is going to stop, it's going to be hard for them to get their thinking together. And this stuff really plays into how a fight plays out. The person putting out the jab, whether it's a single jab or multi-triple jabs, is going to be occupying the space. And think about it. Those shots, of course, we know we can jab the body in the head, but those shots typically up here in the head area is going to control their eyes and therefore also control their thinking, all right? Head punches, I stole this from a great martial arts coach, Chuck Bodak, is the head punches control the thinking and the body punches control the breathing, all right? So remember that little adage in your mind that you're going to put out those jabs, multi, triple, just so many freaking jabs. I remember one round when I sparred this one pro fighter with 50 pro fights. The best round I did is when I just did my best to jab his face off. The goal was to throw 100 jabs in that round, and I threw about 100 jabs in that round, and I definitely owned that round. Now, I'm not going to talk about what happened in the other rounds, right? But that round that I did all those jabs, ooh, that was a little bit of what I needed to do, all right? A little bit of what you need to do. So you control that thinking with the double, triple jabs. You're making them blink, making them just be occupied. Because again, even though jab's not powerful, if I'm taking a towel and just whipping it in your face, dude, it's not going to knock you out. It's going to keep you busy, all right? Now, the way that like Teddy Atlas says it is it's bugs on the windshield, right? So think about that. You got a dirty freaking windshield from all the bugs, man. It is going to be harder to drive the car. An analogy from me that I love is sand in the face. So think about that. You're fighting a guy with a freaking knife, a machete, or whatever, and if you're able to get some dirt off the ground, sand, and throw that crap in their face, and then, get the hell around them, get out of there, or do what you need to do then, it can be a different fight. But if you're trying to fight someone that's dangerous, and you're not controlling their mind, controlling their eyes, putting bugs on the windshield, or throwing sand in their eyes, you're going to have a tough time. All right, and the thing about it as well, if you control the head, you control the body. If you grab my head right now and maneuver it, my body is not in control, because this is the executive function area where everything comes from. And if this is out of whack, controlled, my whole body is controlled. Moving on to the next one, so with the benefits of the multi jabs, is that think about the sniper versus the infantry man. All right, so if you're a sniper up in a crow's nest, let's say, and you're hidden away, the enemy can't necessarily see you, right? They're going to try to find out where you are, and that's how they can hopefully nullify the sniper. But the good sniper, or the ideal picture for the sniper, is they're going to be sitting up in that crow's nest. They're going to be protected because no one knows where they are, and that's why they take that time to be calculated and to line up the perfect shot. As a boxer, there are times that you can be the sniper and have a little bit of that mentality. But in general, for most people, as you're, and throughout most of the time, as you're building up your repertoire as a boxer, and again, even at the high level, if you try to operate too much like a sniper, that's like the sniper that's on the battlefield, not covered, doing the same strategy of lining up the perfect shot, knowing what the wind speed is and everything else, right? Calculating you're doing all this calculation, but you're not up hidden away. You're right there in the freaking battlefield in the ring. And what's going to happen to that sniper? They're not going to last very long. So the same thing can be applied to you versus the infantryman, who's going to be doing what? They're not going to be doing all the lineup and the setup that the sniper's doing. They're shooting. Bam, 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 bam. And out of shooting, they're going to line up the perfect shot or the kill shot. All right? So that's the big difference. And you have to keep that in mind as a boxer. So you keep on shooting is going to be your jab, basically, and some other punches, but that jab. And again, since it costs the least amount of energy and it's the least dangerous, it's going to keep your enemy occupied. Think about it. If like you and I are stuck in a shootout and I'm going to try to change positions, get a little bit closer or whatever, and I say, cover me, that doesn't mean you just stop shooting. You need to be shooting while I run out to keep that person busy or those guys busy so I can now change my position. The same thing goes with boxing. That cover fire is your jab, all right? So just remember that. And just like cover fire, if you're doing one shot and waiting 3 seconds, 4 seconds before the next shot, there is some deterrence there, but it's not as much as pop, 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 pop. Okay? Now, move on and talking more about the fleshing out of the strategy is you start with that jab, the double, triple jabs, right? Or more jabs, right? As many jabs as it takes for you to get yourself into an appropriate position. Because think about it too. What happens most of the time when you double, triple jab, multi-jab somebody, all right? Look at the film. I can show you countless times where guys either shell up or they break down hard at the waist or they jump out hard. So it's like really the three options. They're going to shell up and freeze. They might try to throw something with it, but they might get caught. But typically it's going to be a shutdown for a second because all the barrages of jabs. They're going to break down at the waist to try to get away from it, or they're going to jump out hard to get away. Any of those situations, you jab until you get to where you want to be, right? So if they're break down at the waist, you don't need to keep on jabbing necessarily. You can start letting the appropriate other punches come. If they jump out hard, you got to go after them with those more jabs until you get them to where? To a place where they got nowhere else to go, right? And that's what's beautiful about when you get somebody on the rope is if I get you on the rope right here, I know you can only go this way and you can go this way, right? That's it. You can try to smother me down. Maybe that's about your third option, but you ain't going that way any further, right? You got some pull on it, but there's only so much you're going to be going, all right? Versus if I got you in the middle of the ring, you can go anywhere, all right? So that's what's great and so important about jabbing someone if they're going to leap out and step out, jabbing them, cutting off the ring all the way, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, all the way to the ropes. So now they're on the ropes, their back is up against the wall, and now you can treat them like a human heavy bag, right? Because why you can hit a heavy bag so hard is because that heavy bag isn't just going to jump out from you when you throw something. It's stuck, and you can anticipate what it's going to do this way or that way. So same thing with that person on the ropes. Now, we're starting with those jabs. We throw as many as it takes, okay? While being smart, everything, fundamentally sound. We're going to start at the head, whether it's with the jab or with other punches. We're going to go down to the body, and then we're going to come back up to the head. All right, so let me talk about all these pieces here. So we start off with the head, why? To control the thinking, everything else, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying don't counter to the body. Yes, someone leads with a punch, you can counter for the body every day, all day. Not a problem. I'm talking about leading, all right? And to be clear, again, I'm talking about you firing the first shot because be first is something you hear a lot of boxing coaches say, and it's important. It's definitely important. The person that is tending to lead is tending to control, all right? I mean, again, 80% of the time, this is the situation. So if you can make a habit of being the person that's leading, you're probably controlling the action 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, all right? So you start off at that head because you're going to be controlling their eyes, their thinking, everything else. And whether you hit it, they block it, catch it, or they break down, try to slip it, whatever, dip it, you go down for the body. And now, going down for that body, no matter what they did outside of jumping away, you're going to be hitting something, right? Either good, clean shots that are going to hurt them, but at the very least, you're going to control them. You're hitting something. Hitting something is way better than hitting nothing, right? So you go down for that body. Now, the key is, don't stop at the body. Why? Because now you're inviting the counter. Because every time you throw a body shot, you're open up for the head. And again, like we talked about earlier with single jabs, if you shoot a single jab, you're saying, hey, to a decent person, hey, come on, counter it. Come on, counter it. Boom. Come on, counter. Same thing if I finish at the body and stay there. If I hit the body, boom. Like, you want to hit me back? Boom. Do you want to try to counter that one? Right? So after we hit that body, we're going to come back up to the head. Because also, too, with your opponent that is looking to counter you, and again, I can show you plenty of times where someone goes for the body, intends to come back up to the head, and they get countered in between punches. All right? Yes. But again, we're talking about making this simple. And also, it's going to work the majority of the time. If someone knows that, think about if you're boxing someone and you're noticing that they're starting up top, they're going down for the body, and they stop. Or they go for the body just right away, and they stop. You know, hey, I got nothing to worry about up here. So all I got to do is I got to block that shot, boom, counter back. Versus if they're always coming back up with something, and you don't always know what that something is, it's going to make you more hesitant. And that is also the benefit of throwing punches and bunches, combinations. Again, if I'm throwing one shot, inviting a counter. If I'm throwing multiple punches, the other guy doesn't know when you're going to stop. So now they have to throw when you throw, which can be more dangerous, requires more skill and more timing. And if they don't anticipate and time correctly, it can be a dangerous thing. All right? So again, we're just trying to take more and more things away from your opponent, make it simpler for you, and make you more successful. Last thing, we come back up for that head to shut down the counter. We're going to finish, though, typically, and again, 80-20, right? I'm not saying every single time, and if you don't do, you're going to get knocked the hell out. But try to finish with the lead hand, right? Whether that's a lead, hook, shot, or a jab before you exit out, right? So we start with the head, go down from the body, come back to the head, finish off with a lead side, and we exit out. Go around, whatever. And the benefit of this, as many of you guys know that are into boxing or do boxing, is it's going to side you back up, right? If I finish with a jab, I'm sided back up. I'm automatically more protected than if I finish with the right hand, because I have to side myself up back afterwards. So I'm literally siding myself up with a punch. So with a scoring punch, a punch that's going to hurt them, control them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm getting myself safe. And like my dad would teach, start with a jab, finish with a jab. Start with a jab, go to the body, come back up top, finish with a jab. Use your jab as your entry and your exit punch. Because that's what's so beautiful about the jab, is since it's not a rotational punch, it's just a movement punch. You can jab out and around someone at the end when you're done. You can go after them more if you want with a jab when they get away or whatever. So that's all the benefits of it. And again, it costs least amount of energy. Now, let's talk about, I mentioned 80-20. So let's talk about how this strategy works and doesn't work. Like I said, it's going to work 80% of the time, 20%, and that's a chunk. It's not going to work. All right? It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but these are some of the things that you want to be thinking about, some little side notes, all right? So first off is, and this is, to be clear, this is true with any strategy. Anything that anyone will tell you to do in a boxing ring or in life is not going to work all the time, every single time, because of all the freaking variables that are out there, all right? Now, what are some ways that we can avoid the 20, all right? First off, mix in feints. Because, again, if you do this strategy perfectly, right, you throw multi-jabs, double, triple, combination, go down for the body, finish up top, boom, to exit out. And then you're done. Regroup, blah, blah, blah. When you're ready, you go again, you do the same thing, basically. Now, if they always know you're going to be starting with that jab, a good fighter can counter that jab. We all know that. So how do you know for that? Well, you don't always start when they think you're going to start. You just feint. So get good at your feints. Feints is a whole other art of boxing that's very, very important. But basically, the shortest way to understand and learn it is practice the first fifth of a punch. That first little movement that you're about to throw a punch. One way that I like to think about it, like when I was boxing, and I explained to some of my fighters, is almost like think that you're going to throw the punch, right? Almost think like the same thoughts you would think when you're about to jab, do that to get the feel for it. So you're not, because some guys will be like, okay, well, I'm going to shoot a jab. Boom. I'm going to practice feinting. We'll do something like that. It's like, bro, what you doing? So, yeah, little tips on the jab there, or feints there. But if they don't know when you're starting, right, and they're not sure, they're like, oh, he's starting. Oh, he's not starting. Then they're going to start kind of ignore some of the telltale signs of the start, and then, bam, that will allow you to start and not get creamed when you're trying to start. Right? Makes sense? And then also sometimes, you know, like we said, 80-20. So 20% of the time, lead with some different punches here and there. But man, it's hard to go wrong with some feints and then those double, triple, quadruple, ton of jabs. Do your work and be done. All right, now the second one is moving with the jab. So we need to be able to move with the jab in many different ways. And being able to cut off the ring while multi-jabbing, be able to get our feet correct while we're multi-jabbing, being able to do everything in the ring while maintaining this machine gun-like jab. And that's something that actually I'm going to talk about all of the footwork strategies with that on the whiteboard. So let's go talk about that. All right, guys, so let's talk about footwork with the jab. So you have your boxing ring here, right? The squared circle. Now, your standard basic passive movement is what? You can go forward, you can go backwards, you can go lateral, right or left, all right? Now, let me do that a little bit better. As we all know, a basic thing in boxing, a big no-no that anyone that knows anything about boxing will tell you is what? Don't move straight back, or don't move straight back for more than a couple steps. Right? Now, why is that? Is that just some folklore voodoo stuff? No, there's a good reason why. Because if you're moving straight back, you're going to end up on your heels eventually, right? Think about going back. And you're going to end up where? You're going to end up on the rope right here. Like we talked about earlier up top, you're limited on your options now, all right? Now you're a human heavy bag, potentially, all right? Now, think about this though. A lot of times, people will tell you not to go straight forward. Well, yes, you do want to go straight forward. And with these multi-triple jabs, going straight forward, you're driving that person straight back. Ha-ha, good time. And they're going to end up right here, and they're going to be limited on where they can go. Now, think about it as well. If we can drive them into a corner as well, we're also going to limit the amount of options they have, because now, unlike here, see right here, they can go this way, that way, or they could try to go forward out that way, all right? Or smother you down. Here in the corner, they don't have these options here. They can either go this way, this way, this way. They're stuck, all right? And that is the benefit, as you guys know, of getting people on the ropes, and then the benefit particularly of getting people in the corner. Of course, you as a boxer need to work on getting people in the corners and you avoiding corners. You see that when guys are about to get knocked the hell out or they're really hurt, they'll kind of go one corner, stagger out of that corner, go to the next corner, stagger out of that corner, and eventually they go into a corner that they decide to be where their grave is going to be, and that's where they get stopped. Now, so if it's the case that we want to drive people straight back, if they want to let us drive them straight back, which it is the case, a good boxer is going to do what? They're not going to let you drive them straight back. They're going to try to avoid off in a circular type pattern, off the line. So they're going to go typically off to a circle pattern like that or a circle pattern like this, right? So they're circling off like that because if you're coming in straight and they're getting a little bit off the side as they're making space, guess what? Now you're here, they're over here, they have all of that to go. All right, so they're good and you're in trouble now because you're over here and you got to start all over again. Or they can reverse it on you if they want to be aggressive and drive you right to the ropes or to a corner, all right? So, how do we nullify that situation? You know how to jab in and cut them off as you do it, all right? So being able to jab, make space, or rather overcome space, get closer as you match their movement, right? Because it's very easy as a beginner boxer, and obviously it's your first foundational things you learn, is to be able to step forward, step backwards, step laterally, and step to the other side. And that's it. So you're working in these 4 planes. What you need to be able to do with this double triple jab is not only be able to cut off laterally, but get in closer as you do so, all right? So as they're cutting off here, you are making this pattern, so therefore, you're gonna catch them at some point and be able to drive them straight back. Same thing goes for this way as well. So you need to work on these patterns of movement, which I'm gonna demonstrate in a video. Here's that jab, forward and lateral movement. Again, it's very important to be able to be in your stance and be able to jab straight in with your double, triple jabs, multi-jabs to drive them straight back. Very important concept like we talked about. Now, let's talk about moving forward in off to the side. Very easy to do to the lead side. But most people, if you're boxing an orthodox boxer particularly, they're not going to go that way. They're going to go off that way because think about it. Easiest to move this way. So they're going to be moving back and circling off to this side if they're a good fighter. So let's use our line here to show this. So again, they're going to be going this way. A lot of times they're going to make a little bit of space go off that way if you can't drive them straight back. So we need to be able to get not only closer, but stay with them. How do we do that? Watch my feet here. I have to make sure my stance is not on a tightrope. We know this anyway, good boxing technique. You don't want to be on a tightrope because you lack in lateral movement in general, but also too, it's just not going to be a good position to throw your other punches. So if I'm here off the tightrope with that first jab, I'm going to step in and almost get on a tightrope. Watch. I'm here, boom. I got a little bit closer and I got a little bit on a tightrope. Now the back foot's going to come afterwards. I'm here. Next jab, I get closer, almost on a tightrope, bring the back foot up with me. And then so over time what's going to happen is I'm here in my stance. Here's my guy. He's going to make space and get off to the side. I'm here. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm staying with him. I'm going in a pure line that way. I'm not curving with him because, again, think about it. If I curve with somebody and I do this number, I'm not going to get them, right? And then if I only go pure lateral and he's making space on me, I'm not going to get him because he's going lateral and backwards. Make sense? So you need practices in the ring. Advantageous positions to have somebody is either on the rope or in a corner, all right? When they're in the middle of the ring, they can go anywhere, right? So if someone's in the middle of the ring right here, my movement potential, look at that, it's like a sun, is endless. Again, here, my movement potential, side to side, here, and maybe I could drive forward. So you're cutting off half the options, and then here, you're cutting off even more options. So see that? It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? Now, I can hear right now, because not everybody is stocky, not everybody is medium build, right? There's some guys that are great boxers, a lot of great boxers, that are long and lanky. Now in this situation, you can still do the same thing. Why is that? Because off those double, triple jabs, you're jabbing in, you want to have small steps, but that jab, just like for a shorter guy, is your measuring stick. And just like a measuring stick, once you get past a certain point, you know you got to stop. And it's a literal physical arm barrier in the way that will stop you from smothering yourself. So often, you'll see short guys, medium-sized guys, or tall guys smother themselves, right? Smother themselves from their optimum range of power and leverage that can be generated. Versus great fighters get people right where they want them, all right? Think about like Tommy Hearns. He has the great range so he can create perfect leverage or achieve his perfect leverage and maximum power with his punches, him being a longer guy. So you can use that jab as a taller guy, and if someone wants to, you know, because everyone habitually, right, if you freaking do a bunch of punches in my face, habitually, most people, they're going to go back just a little bit, no matter who they are, all right? And that's where you, as a taller person, can use this jab. Now, also, though, you might want to use the jab as a taller person to do the circle pattern, all right? So you, as a taller guy, can be here and then kind of just circle around, because now you're keeping range, you're keeping them busy to line up. You're doing everything we're doing with the strategy, but you're not necessarily getting closer at all. You're either keeping the same exact range or even slightly getting out as the other person tries to get slightly closer to you. But think about it. This pattern here, if you start from here, it's a long time before you end up on the ropes. And then, of course, you can just switch the pattern here like that, and that gives you more space and everything else. All right, so as a longer guy, you're going to jab a little bit more off to the side sometimes. As a shorter guy, I strongly recommend you not, or even as a medium-sized guy, I recommend you being able to jab, and the tall guy too, jabbing straight in with multi-jabs, because that's hopefully going to drive them straight back, completely control them, and you're going to minimize the ability of getting smothered. Think about it. If you're coming in with big old hooks and things like that, there's openings there where if they stop immediately or they step into you, you're like this or like this, and now they're inside you, and now it's all shut down. All your good work is smothered, and it's very hard to work off of that. Versus if I have an arm in the way and I'm jabbing and someone tries to get inside of it, there is some control that happens. There's some space that is naturally created that's going to keep you from getting smothered. So if you're a shorter guy and you're attacking people and you're finding yourself, you always get in close and too close, it's probably because you're not doing the strategy. All right, so start doing the strategy. So let's go up in the ring, and let's finish up doing what we're talking about. All right, so now let's talk about a couple more tie-up notes before I hit my final thoughts on the multi-jab strategy. So we need to defend while we jab, okay? Because like any weapon, any good weapon can make you dangerous, right? It's like you could have the best weapon ever, but if you tend to deliver it in a really ridiculous way that opens you up, it can be your downfall, all right? So obviously making sure that when we shoot that jab, we're sided up, we hide our chin behind the shoulder as we do it, the chin is down. Again, that's like just like multi-jabs, chin down. So many guys, they get away with that with their chin up for so long. And I'm sure people tell them, but they get away with it. They get away with it until they don't get away with it. And then they have a horrible career-defining loss, let's say, all right? Or get seriously hurt. All right, but keeping that chin down, popping the shoulder up, keeping yourself sided up, using this backhand, the rear hand for your defense. Again, talking about 80-20, I can stop over half the amount of punches with this rear hand, right? I can catch a jab, I can catch a right crossover, so a jab, right cross, right hand up, uppercut, up for the head, up the middle here, all right? I can block the hook here. So you need to be able to jab and have this arm be jabbing independent of this hand doing your defense. And again, you put head movement on top of this, woo, and footwork, you're gonna give people a hell of a time, but you gotta make sure you develop this rear hand like every great defensive fighter. Think about Georgie Benton to Floyd Mayweather. So being able to shoot out this jab and be here, boom, catch, different timing, here, oh. The only shot that they can hit you with then is something with the right hand for the body, all right? But again, the more you can focus on bringing this elbow in and not chicken wing and jabbing, the less you make that vulnerable, the more unpredictable you are with feints and things of that nature. It's gonna make it harder as well. And then you could say they could get a shot up the middle. You could kind of get things in there as well, but nevertheless, the 1, 2, 3 uppercuts, 4 and 5 is what we call them. You're stopping all those shots, so you're only left, and you can stop the left hook to the body as well. So only some things on the right side, and sometimes like a real crazy overhand right. And that's it. But you're not gonna get good at this, and you're not gonna believe me until you practice this stuff, right? Until you get in front of that mirror and you literally practice doing all those jabs, mixing and catching and blocking, and not seeing yourself, seeing your opponent, throwing those punches and you reacting, you watching while you're throwing. And that is also something too, that if you haven't got this down yet, you must get this down. Being able to throw while watching your opponent. So often we will watch our opponent, and our defense is okay. Then we throw, we kind of stop watching and stop looking for things coming, and that's why you get hit so much when you're throwing oftentimes. So being able to throw that jab, all those jabs, while you're watching. Not only watching for the punch coming that they might be throwing, but also watching what their body's doing, so therefore you can deliver the appropriate combination. Now I recommend starting off though, just practice throwing combinations off of the jab and just mixing it up. Because again, that takes a little extra level of ability depending what ability you're at. But initially, if you're kind of the beginner, intermediate, work on double, triple jabs, multiple jabs, and then doing something besides a right hand after that, all right? Or if you're southpaw, straight left hand. So after those multi-jabs, go with the hook for the body, come back up top with the combination. After those multi-jabs, do a lead uppercut. Do a rear uppercut if it was appropriate in that situation. Do a right hook to the body, come back up top for the head, bam, bam, side yourself back up at the end. Throwing different things, because again, this is one way you can make this not work, is by doing multi-jabs, just like I'm telling you, and you'll have some success. But if you're always looking to land the right hand after that, they'll be looking for that right hand, and a decent guy will counter you, right? You want to keep the guy guessing, all right? If you keep him guessing and you keep controlling him, controlling his mind, controlling his breathing and his body, you'll have a good time. All right, now the last thing is, before I have my final thoughts, is avoiding overuse injuries, all right? Because if you're going to be jabbing people's face off, and you're going to be jabbing your freaking arm off, all right? So the number one way to avoid injuries with a jab is, especially when you start off and you're working on all these jabs, don't try to murder somebody with every single one of these jabs, all right? You can, with time, learn how to get an awesome snap at the end that's going to make them sting and make a pretty powerful jab. But focus on first just the motion. I have a video on this, on how to throw a bunch of jabs fast. But just the motion of even this. Not even turning the hand over and working the feet with it, because that's another thing too. You got to coordinate your step with your jab, right? But here, and that way I'm focused on getting my elbow back. All right, see that? And I'm not chicken winging. Then once I got that, then at the end, I can get the turnover. So I'm here, like that. Those are the basics of it. I honestly feel it more in my bicep than in my shoulder because of the momentum that I'm shifting from going out and stopping and bringing back, right? So I'm actually feeling my bicep, honestly, a lot more than I feel my shoulder. A lot of times when we feel our shoulders when we box, again, you can just feel this anyway if you're doing everything perfect because it's just such a ballistic sport, but as you have tension, there's a little bit of tension in the shoulder, so now you're fatiguing and just really overusing all of that. And that comes from squeezing before you hit and things of that nature, but it's going to cause you a lot of trouble. Now, with all this extension, you need to work on the posterior delt, so reverse flies, doing Y shapes, like get a TRX band or just bands going up here, and you're going for high reps, burning it out. Do a split stance here, T's here, and then down here with like a W or an M shape, this would be like a W, here, like that, getting the posterior delt as well as some lats as well, because you want to build all that up. You as a boxer, you're going to work a lot here in the anterior shoulder, the pecs and everything else. So you have to avoid overuse injuries, have to work everything else back here to support it. And the more you do that, let me tell you, you will feel like you just have like armor and protection and you're almost bulletproof, because all that is relatively strong and engaged and everything else and able to be activated and is not imbalanced by all the extension that is in boxing, all right? So that's just something you really got to watch out for. Also, last little tip on that is like sleeping, is if you are jabbing people's face off like you should be, it might be hard to sleep on your lead shoulder, all right? Because you spend a night sleeping on a lead shoulder and that lead shoulder is so overworked, you're going to cut off some blood flow and things like that and put it in awkward positions, and you might wake up feeling like, oh man, my shoulder feels horrible, and it might just be because of how you slept, all right? And then lastly is getting a ball, like whether it's a golf ball, lacrosse ball, whatever, getting on a wall and hitting these points, leaning up against that ball, and then moving the arm around. That's the key. Don't just hit it and feel it. Hit it, breathe, focus on breathing and relaxing so you're not just like this doing it, and then moving the arm around, and you'll work out that tissue and those knots that you have. And that can be a really important way to help for recovery, as well as also before you start your workout to help you loosen up. And to be clear too, with these exercises also as well, the rotator cuff work, elbow in, stays in, got a band here, boom, getting that posterior delt as well. Do that, like I said, high rep, a lot of times to start a workout, because that's gonna get everything primed for all the other stuff so that these other muscles don't take over and create overuse injuries, all right? Now, final thoughts. I want you to think about this. When you think of a classic power puncher, right? You think of the biggest punchers. You don't tend to think about their jab, all right? Now think about how in your mind that's a bias that might be messing you up, because a lot of them, you could make an argument for, did have some good jabs. But they got away, some of them got away without a good jab or emphasizing a jab because the power made up for it, right? And again, not all the time, but a lot of these guys you can think of that are big, powerful punches, powerful punchers, they are not your consummate multi-jabbers, all right? And then when you think of multi-jabbers, right, I think in the contemporary period, people like maybe Paulie Malignaggi or like Devin Haney, guys that are known for, you know, doing some double jabs and things of that nature, they're not known for being the biggest punchers. And those things are not mutually exclusive. It's not like, oh man, you throw double, triple jabs, so therefore you can't throw power shots. It's that these guys don't have very much power, so they make up for it with that double, triple jab, multi-jabs. So think about it. You develop power, you have some power, and also too, I'm a strong believer that you can grow your power. Sure, you might not be born to be Gervonta Davis power or Mike Tyson power or whatever, but whatever power ability you have right now, I've done it time and time again with my fighters. You can go from being a powder puff hitter to being a freaking almost a brick smasher, right? Maybe not the elite, because you got to remember too, these guys that you're thinking about as power punchers, they hit harder than the dude in your gym, all right? Unless you're in the gym with one of these guys. But this world-class power puncher guy, he hits harder than the guy that hits hard in your gym, all right? So that's one thing you got to remember. People like Canelo, stuff like that, he hits harder than any dude that's that weight in your gym, unless you're in the gym with Canelo, all right? So, but think about it. They have that jab because they have a deficit, or in a sense, they don't have the biggest powerful punch, so the jab makes up for that deficit. The power puncher makes up for maybe some deficits on multi-jabs with their power punches. Oh my gosh, what if you combine those two things together? That sounds like a pretty good fighter, doesn't it? And of course, you can probably make a correlation. The most of the greatest fighters, not the good ones, not the ones that are like, you know, they're in the history books, but they're just like not the greatest fighters in their divisions. The ones that are the greatest, they did more of that. They did more of the double, triple jabs. Used the jab to back up the power shots. All right? And the last thing is, remember, like I talked about in the beginning, with the genesis of this and why my dad kind of developed this whole strategy and system is keep it simple. Boxing has the potential to be so complex that it'll just shut you down. And complexity is the enemy of execution. You can make something so freaking complex that you don't execute, and then you're going to miss everything that you want to achieve with it. So you want to make it simple, and also, while being complex, it sounds hypocritical, but boxing is also really simple. It's a really stupid sport in a lot of ways, in the sense that it's just how much can you hit the other guy and how much can you not get hit, right? Can you just hit him more than he hits you? And if you can do that, or just hit him enough that you get him out of there, you won the fight. So don't step away in your journey progressing as a boxer. Don't forget that. Don't forget, at the end of the day, doesn't matter what pretty thing you learned or this, that, and other thing, cool little dance move you did. It matters how much you hit the dude, and if you did it more than the dude hit you, and hopefully you minimize the amount of damage that you had while doing it. And maybe you hit him enough and hard enough that you took him out of there. And it's going to be very hard for anyone to rob you of a win if you do that. Think about it. One of the most stylistic boxers, right? Most entertaining guys to watch, Emmanuel Augustus. He was a great journeyman. And he had all these amazing, cool looking things he did. So a lot of times the guys that you remember as being like, wow, like they do so much crazy stuff. What I've noticed is those guys are not, they don't end up to be the greatest of those divisions, all right? And if they do end up being, because I know I keep on saying it's the greatest, you know, like Ali had some wow stuff, but also he had some basic stuff, dude. You watch that guy in the Olympics, like when my father's mentor, Chuck Bodak, was working with him. I mean, dude, it's some basic stuff, man. It's not some crazy stuff. And then also, even if you want to think about like a crazy high technical fighter, like Lomachenko, there's also so much foundation there. Think about how many jabs he throws and how many multi-jabs he throws. You know, throwaway type punches, things that he does control people. And he's not worried about trying to land every single shot. That kind of runs me back, just to close out, to that thing I talked about in the earlier part of the video of the idea of trying to make every shot a kill shot. If you're trying to do that, you're not going to land the kill shot. And look at a guy like Lomachenko, who is, you know, so gifted and also has so much skill as well. So he's talented and he has skill. His punch accuracy isn't that high. So remember that for yourself. You got to be setting things up, putting things out there, setting it up with a multi-triple jab, and you're going to be successful then. And if you just try to land that, like, that highlight reel shot, that check hook, you know, that one lead shot, boom, oh my gosh. Those shots are special for a reason, because they don't happen that often, all right? We want to do what's going to work most of the time in most of the situations, 80-20. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comment, put that below. If you feel like anyone could benefit from this video, please share it with them. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the video, guys, and I'll see you for the next one.